Every year, there are a few players who end up defining how the season goes. And it's not always just the superstars. It is oftentimes those high variance players with a ton of talent, but just as much risk that can swing everything. And if you're looking at this year's Twins team, there are a few names that I think fit that mold perfectly, starting with Royce Lewis. We have seen the flashes, and that's what makes him so interesting because when Royce Lewis is on, he does not just look good, he looks like legitimately one of the best players in baseball. We're talking about a guy who can hit for power, get on base, and change the game in one swing of the bat. But the problem is, we just haven't seen it for long enough. Last season, he hit 236 with a 285 on base percentage. His slugging percentage dropped below 400 for the first time in his career. And when you dig a little deeper, the underlying numbers did not exactly scream bad luck. Now, you roll that into spring training, and the struggles have not disappeared. At the same time, though, his upside has not gone anywhere. We have already seen plenty of stretches where Royce Lewis looks like a legitimate MVP candidate. His bat speed is still there. The ability to drive balls to all parts of the field is still there. It's just about putting it all together and perhaps more importantly, just staying on the field. Because if we get 130 to 140 games of a healthy, locked in Royce Lewis, this lineup looks completely different. If you don't, though, then you are once again trying to replace production that you were counting on. And that is what makes him one of the biggest X factors on this entire roster. The next guy I want to bring up is Luke Keaschall, and he kind of feels like the dictionary definition of an X Factor player because when he was on the field last year, he was arguably the Twins' best hitter after getting called up. He hit 302 with a 382 on base percentage, 18 extra base hits, and 14 stolen bases in just 49 games. You stretch that out over a full season, and you are looking at one of the more complete offensive players in the league, a guy who can hit for a high average, get on base at a high clip, and add value on the base paths. And the advanced metrics back it up too. His contact rates were extremely strong. He consistently squared balls up. And perhaps most importantly, he did not look overmatched for a 22-year-old. But then you get to the other side of it. In 3 professional seasons, Keaschall has played in just 211 games collectively. Last year alone, he was limited to just 77 because of multiple injuries. And as the saying goes, availability is the best ability, or something along those lines, because it does not matter how talented you are if you're not in the lineup. And that's the risk with Keaschall. The Twins might have a true superstar on their hands, or they might have somebody who just simply cannot stay healthy long enough to make that kind of impact. And depending on which version they get, it can completely change the outlook of this offense. And then the last guy I want to bring up is a name that usually doesn't come up in these types of conversations. It's Anthony Banda, because when you think make or break player, you probably aren't thinking about a reliever, but perhaps you should, because the Twins are likely heading into 2026 without that defined traditional closer role. It is probably going to be more of a closer by committee type of situation. And in that kind of setup, someone inevitably has to step up and emerge as somebody you can trust in late game situations. I think there's a very real chance that Banda becomes that guy. And if he does, it could quietly be one of the most important developments of the season. Banda has experience in big games and in high pressure situations from his time with the Dodgers. He has been on several teams with playoff expectations and has been trusted in crucial innings, which is exactly what the Twins will need from him because this bullpen on paper is probably the weakest part of the roster. There are guys with potential, but very little high leverage experience. If Banda can give the Twins reliable innings in big spots, whether that is the seventh, eighth, or potentially even the ninth inning, it would kind of stabilize everything. And that might sound like a small impact, but it is not because over the course of a full season, 5 games that don't slip away from you late can be the difference between finishing third in the division and making the playoffs, especially in what is projected to be a very tight American League Central race. So when you look at this Twins team, yes, obviously the stars matter. I'm certainly not saying they don't, but it's guys like Royce Lewis, Luke Keaschall, and Anthony Banda that may ultimately decide how the season plays out. Because if things break right, this team has real sneaky upside. But if they don't, 2026 could wind up being a pretty long season. But that's all I've got for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for Twins news and updates every single day. But until next time, I'm Sam Calder, and I'm out.